Last week, I received this email from Shannon, a teacher with questions I think we can all relate to. Here's what she wrote. I'm in my 8th year of teaching, and while I love aspects of it, I work 10 to 11 hours a day and am burning out. And I feel that I'm on an island sometimes in my school. I have to reteach skills that they should have been taught in earlier years. I have one foot out of the door of the teaching profession. I find myself awake at night trying to figure out how to do a good job teaching both reading and writing and getting in all the skills. How do you do whole class novel units and teach all the skills? Say I want to teach Gatsby and focus on character contrast and figurative language. Is it okay to focus on just a few skills each unit? How do you make sure they get practiced efficiently while also making sure to have time for current events, reading informational texts? How long do you spend on a unit to make sure you can test them and build background prior? Do you have them write a lot of literary analysis essays? How do we then factor in teaching all the types of writing? Expository, argument, narrative? Well, we have to teach all these reading skills. These are great questions. And today and next time on the podcast, I'm going to do my best to answer them because I think they're ones we've all faced as teachers. How on earth are we supposed to cover all the things and teach them well? Today, we're looking at the big picture, how to plan the year to cover what you want to cover without getting overwhelmed. Next time on the podcast, we'll zoom in on planning a single whole class text unit and how to make all the decisions that go with that planning. So are you ready? Let's do this. Hey there, I'm your host, Betsy Potash, and one-pagers, project-based learning, and choice reading are my jam. I believe in you, and my goal is to help you explore all the creative possibilities you dream of for your classroom. I'm an educator, a chocolate cake aficionado, a traveler who can't wait to get back to Barcelona, and the kind of mom who brings her own mini makerspace to her kid's classroom when she comes to volunteer. I know this for sure, creativity isn't always easy. As a creative teacher, you get parent calls you treasure, and plenty of sidelong comments you'd rather forget. But here's the bottom line. Creative education can ignite a spark in your students and change their lives forever. You and I know this. You're an innovator, and while it's sometimes hard, it's so worth it. So let's explore the world of creative education together. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast. So today I want to start by telling you about my beautiful rainbow striped paper planner. I'm very attached to it. It goes with me everywhere, and I use it to outline pretty much everything I'm going to do every day, every week, each month, each year. On any given Monday, I could list out about 100 things that I'm going to do that week, but I never do because it would be wildly overwhelming and it wouldn't even fit in my planner. Instead, in the Monday column, I just list out a few Monday tasks and anything urgent that has come up because I know what I do on Mondays, and I know what I do on Tuesdays, and I know what I do on Wednesdays. I know what I'll be focusing on day by day, week by week, and month by month. And by the end of the year, I've listed everything for the year, right? But only because I've put in a few things each day, day by day, week by week. There's a system. As you consider the layout of your teaching year, I'd suggest a similar approach. As you plan a course, you probably have a set of units you'd like to try out, right? Things you're excited about. Maybe you want to do a book clubs unit, a podcasting unit, a choice reading unit, a contemporary poetry unit, a college essay unit, and more than a few whole class novels, like Shannon and her text, The Great Gatsby. At the same time, you've got this set of things you need to teach, like your school may call them standards, they may call them skills, maybe they call them the qualities of the 21st century learner. Whatever they call them, you want to teach certain reading, writing, research, and speaking skills, right? The foundation of ELA. Then you've probably got a whole bunch of must-dos and may-dos that are flexible across different units, like the review lessons Shannon was talking about. Things like vocabulary development, grammar mini lessons, programs you want to try, like Genius Hour and First Chapter Fridays, and working on your choice reading program. Then there's other stuff. Maybe your district is pushing you to incorporate way more SEL post-pandemic. Maybe your department is diving into project-based learning. Maybe everyone's talking about article of the week this year, and you need to do it too. Maybe there's a big push for using modern mentor texts. If you were to write all of this down as a to-do list, it would feel completely impossible. How are you supposed to do it all? But just like with my lovely rainbow planner, it's all about breaking this tornado of content down into more doable chunks. Today, I want to talk about using a combination of mixing and matching and consistent programs that you can count on throughout the year. As you're building a curriculum for your year, the most essential thing is making choices, right? You cannot cover every ELA skill with depth with real-world connection. You cannot teach 1,000 vocabulary words, review every grammar concept that your students are missing, build a thriving choice reading program, carefully teach 3 types of writing and modern ELA skills like podcasting and short video creation, while also reading 5 required texts and maybe hosting a school TEDx conference or a district-wide poetry slam. I know that you know. So let's start with mixing and matching skills, units, and programs. This is my technique for taking the tornado of content and turning it into something in the big picture that you can follow, that you can prepare for day by day. When you want to mix and match, this is the time to connect certain skills to certain texts and then integrate consistent programs with your certain skills and certain texts. So let's look at an example. Let's say you're going to start the year and you want to focus on connecting with your students and kind of figuring out what you need to review, what you need to shore up that they're missing. So your first unit of the year is all about connection and background knowledge. Let's say you've been wanting to do memoir book clubs. You have these 4 great texts and you're super excited to roll them out to your students. And so you decide this first unit of the year where you're working on connection is a good time to do memoir book clubs and focus on kind of personal writing, personal narrative writing. So you're going to teach narrative writing. You're going to do memoir book clubs. What else? How are you going to fill in this unit? So we're trying to create a schedule where you can accomplish the certain skills that you want to accomplish in this unit with consistent programs on consistent days. So let's say on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you're going to have book club meetings. You're going to talk about these awesome memoir books that you've been saving up for your memoir book clubs. And you're going to have sort of a consistent format for those book club meetings so students know what to expect. You also know that those book club meetings are not going to take the whole period. They would kind of drag if you had students in small groups for the whole period. So you're going to have your book club meetings with sort of a consistent structure that everyone is used to. But you're also going to have time for mini lessons on these days, 10 or 15 minutes, where you can focus on whatever skill or short lesson you want to sort of shore up the knowledge of your students in this way that we've been talking about. So maybe sometimes these mini lessons are going to focus on a reading skill that you notice that students are lacking. You're going to do some modeling. You're going to, create some scaffolding so that this reading skill gets developed. And maybe on other days, it's going to focus on the narrative writing skills that you want to roll out because you're doing narrative writing during this period. So on some days, they'll have a book club meeting, and then you'll do a mini lesson on some kind of reading or grammar or writing skill. On other days, they'll have a book club meeting and you will do a mini lesson on narrative writing, but then followed up maybe with some actual writing. So on these 3 days of the week, the book club days, you're always going to have a book club meeting and a mini lesson, maybe followed by some writing practice. Now, you are already starting to build the skills that you're going to want to be leaning on throughout the year. You're kind of reviewing, you're shoring up, you're getting everybody to the same place. At the same time, you're introducing these really engaging texts that students got to choose for themselves. You're incorporating student choice, their contemporary texts, so students are connecting with the real world that they're living in. And you now have 3 days a week planned for the next 5 or 6 weeks of your whole unit. Now you're going to complement your sort of main focus with some consistent programming. So let's say on Tuesdays, you're going to lean into current events. This is going to be current event day. Maybe in these first 6 weeks, the theme of your current events is going to be AI. Students are really interested in it, so you're going to be watching some TED Talks, reading articles, reading the open letter on AI from all these tech experts. You're going to have a chance to build in some argument writing here with some quick writing about what they're reading, maybe some speed debating. You'll also have a chance to reinforce those reading skills that you're introducing during the Memoir Book Club's days, because you're still reading, you're still taking in text. It's just that now it's informational text about AI. And so you're using the same skills in a slightly different context, and hopefully also a really engaging context, because students are really thinking about how is this AI going to affect their lives, their future careers, their schoolwork even. Maybe this will also be the day that you introduce new vocabulary words. So if you at your school have a program of vocabulary, you can save 10 minutes to introduce the vocabulary of the week. Maybe that's listening to a vocabulary podcast. Maybe that's doing a little lesson on Latin roots, and then introducing words that relate to those roots. Maybe that's pulling vocabulary out of these informational articles and TED Talks that you're examining about AI and covering them that way. Or maybe they're vocabulary words from your Memoir Book Clubs and you're doing it that way. Whatever. So you'll have like 30 minutes on AI and argument and a little bit of time for vocabulary. And you know that that's every Tuesday. Now, Fridays are the only days left, and you want to devote those days to choice reading, because you want to build a consistent independent reading program where students are reading books that they love and they're thriving with that. So on Fridays, you'll make sure that you've got your book displays up. You'll make sure you've got like a cool bulletin board about your books. Your covers are facing out in your class library. Maybe you'll do a first chapter Friday read aloud, or you'll do a book talk, or a student will do a book talk. Maybe you'll show a book trailer. Kids will have time to read. You'll have a chance to check in with kids and make sure they have books they like. You'll have a little bit of time still, even after spending some time with choice reading. And so Fridays maybe will be the day that you will follow up on your vocabulary lesson from Tuesday. So maybe that's with some kind of writing activity, or a game with the words, or maybe it's a quick quiz. Somehow you're reinforcing those vocabulary words so they're not just floating alone one day a week. Okay, so now you know what every day of the week is going to be. On Mondays, book clubs and a mini lesson. On Tuesday, current events and vocabulary. Wednesdays and Thursdays are both mini lesson and maybe writing and book club meetings. And then Friday is choice reading and follow up on the vocabulary. So you'll still have to plan those days every day, day by day, but you know that you're hitting all these different skills that you wanted to hit on. You know you're doing the texts you wanted to do. You know you're doing the current events you wanted to do. And you know that you're cultivating this long-term program of consistent choice reading that's important to you. Maybe you even layer in an attendance question every day or every couple days in these first 6 weeks, because you're really trying to help students share a little about themselves and build community in your classroom. Now, as that first unit comes to a close, you want to do a special project, let's say. You want to do podcasting. This is a real-world ELA skill you've identified as being really important to you. And so you're going to have students look back through the personal narrative writing that they've done all through those little quick writes on the mini lesson days about narrative, and choose some of their favorites, and they're going to develop those into a storytelling podcast in the final week of the unit. Okay, so let's look back at all that's been accomplished in these first 6 weeks. In the first chunk of the year, you've started to build a foundation of reading skills. You've practiced them with student-selected texts that they hopefully really liked. You've strengthened community connections with personal writing and attendance questions. You've created momentum for your choice reading program. You've touched on real-world argument through current events. You've presented a variety of new vocabulary words. And you've made a lot of connections between the real world and your classroom. You've also built consistency into your schedule. You know what you're doing every day. Your students know what they're doing every day. You know how to plan for each day, each week, and the unit as a whole because you know what skills you're trying to build. You know what your text is. You know what your writing focus is. And you know what those consistent repeating programs are. Well, it might sound kind of overwhelming when we summarize it here in like 3 lightning fast minutes. The truth is, each day you're only going to be planning one day at a time, and you'll always know what to plan. I mean, can you batch plan this? Yes, you could batch plan all your mini lessons. You could batch plan all your vocab lessons. But you don't have to. If you want to take it day by day the first time you're rolling out a new unit, that's fine too. If it's a Monday, you're getting ready for your book clubs. You're choosing what mini lesson would be most important for your students. If it's Tuesday, you're getting your vocab ready, right? And your current events article or TED Talk. Wednesdays and Thursdays are just like Monday. You've got your book club system. You prepare your mini lesson. And then Friday, you continue with your choice reading program. You always have that to rely on, and then you follow up with your vocab. At the end of the unit, you roll out your podcast project, and then you start to create a similar system for your next unit, right? It's more of the same. You're going to be mixing and matching texts with some kind of skill focus and then layering in consistent programs. So, let's do it one more time. Let's do it for this time a whole class novel unit. Let's say you're reading The Great Gatsby, since Shannon mentioned The Great Gatsby. Now, you can bring a really similar system here to this whole class text. You can assign chunks of reading from The Great Gatsby to go with some sort of focus on Gatsby 3 days a week again. Let's say it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday again, just to keep it consistent. On those days, there are all kinds of ways you can approach Gatsby, right? You could do mini lessons. Shannon mentioned that she wanted to teach about character contrast and figurative language. So on those Gatsby days, sometimes you're going to focus on characterization. Maybe you're going to do a characterization one-pager. You're going to do some group annotation around passages related to characterization. She mentioned she wanted to take a look at metaphorical language in the text. So maybe some days you're going to do writing or discussion, like a Harkness discussion or a hexagonal thinking discussion or a group discussion around metaphorical language. And you're going to show some examples and some models, and you're going to get kids talking about that. Maybe some days you're going to do some writing practice around Gatsby. You're going to continue your work with argument that you started in the first unit where you were doing your mini arguments on real world issues, AI, and now you're going to do it about Gatsby, and you're going to do some modeling of how you might construct a thesis based on a part of Gatsby, maybe about a character. You're going to work on some quick writes there, some practice argument. You're going to do some peer editing. All of that stuff is going to take place on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, the text days, where you're focusing on the text and you're also bringing in the text-based skills that you want to be working on, the writing skills that you want to be working on. And now we also have those consistent programs that we want to layer in, right? So maybe in this unit, you've always wanted to try Genius Hour, and you think it would be really meaningful for your students to get to work on some kind of passion project. And you want to continue their focus on narrative writing from the first 6 weeks. And so you say that Tuesdays, you guys are going to work on Genius Hour blogs. So for Genius Hour, kids get to pursue something that they're really excited about, whatever that is, and they're going to document it on this blog where they're going to write about their experience. They're going to document their real world project. So on Tuesdays, you guys are going to work on this Genius Hour project. Then you have Fridays left. Fridays are for choice reading, so you know you want to continue helping your students build their love of reading. You want to continue helping them explore diverse texts across a range of possibilities, and so you continue on Friday with your choice reading program. You can also continue with your vocabulary lessons. And maybe in this term, you're going to sneak the vocabulary follow-ups in on Thursdays with your focus on Gatsby instead of having them on Tuesdays, since you gave Tuesdays to Genius Hour. As you work through this all, your students are building their skills with argument writing, with close reading. They're learning about Gatsby or talking about different aspects of the American dream. Maybe you're bringing in some paired texts. And as the unit comes to a close, you want to follow up on the work that you've done with argument writing. So you invite students to look back through all of the short writing that they've done in the unit, choose the best one, and then you go through a process of improving it, polishing it, expanding it, editing it, and then turning it in. Then you have your students present their Genius Hour project, since they've been working on that throughout the unit as well. Maybe you do like sort of a super mini TEDx style format. They can have 4 slides, they can have 2 minutes. Each of them presents their project really quickly. And this is sort of the beginning of presentation and public speaking skills in your class. You've touched on a little bit with your speed debating during the AI and your argument writing, but now they're gonna have their first chance to get their feet wet sort of on stage in your classroom. Okay, so let's look back now at all that we've done in this unit, which we've again extremely quickly summarized in 2 or 3 minutes. Now, in this unit, you've continued to develop narrative writing, so you've followed up on something you did in the first unit. You've also followed up on argument skill development, using argument skills in a different way. Instead of using them to talk about AI, you've used them to talk about Gatsby. You've helped your students improve their close reading skills and whatever specific skills you chose to focus on in your mini lessons. So for Shannon, maybe that's characterization, character contrast, figurative language. You've continued to build your students' love of reading with all the related improvement in vocabulary and writing. You've also worked on their discussion and editing skills, their vocabulary, and you've built in more real-world connections and community connections with their Genius Hour projects and their Genius Hour final presentations. Okay, so these are just 2 examples of how you might approach a unit with this mindset that you're going to mix and match. You're going to choose some skills to go with one overall text or thematic focus, and then layer in those specific programs like choice reading, current events writing, Genius Hour, vocabulary, grammar mini lessons, things like that. We had our first unit of the year focusing on narrative writing, community connection, and memoir book clubs. And then we had our second unit of the year focusing on the Great Gatsby, argument, and these sort of specific reading skills that Shannon had mentioned, and layering in the oh so exciting Genius Hour, and of course, choice reading. Okay, my friend, that was the whirlwind from the big picture standpoint. Next time, we're going to be zooming in on creating one of these specific units and the steps you can go through to create a unit that's really meaningful to you and incorporates everything you want to incorporate. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.